And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Ryan Metzler.
Hey everyone, it's Ryan Metzler here, and today I'm going to talk to you about some of the hotness, some of the newest games from Essen. Today we're going to be taking a look at Myrmes, or whatever the name of the game is. Regardless of how you pronounce it, this is a game about ants. Somewhat unique in theme, although there is the game Antics from the Frago brothers. But in this game, you're going to be controlling a colony of ants. And you're going to be using worker placement and tile placement in order to try and score points. And there's several different resources to manage, several different types of workers to manage. But before I get into that too much, why don't we just open up the box and take a look at what's inside of it, how the game plays, and then I'll come back here and give you my final thoughts on Myrmes. So here you can see the setup for a two-player game of Myrmes, the red player starting here and the yellow player starting over here. I know it's going to be a little difficult to see with all of the components out here, but you kind of need to see the whole thing in action in order to understand what's going on. At the beginning of the game, you're going to roll these 3 dice, and they're going to dictate what the events are going to be for each of the seasons in the first year. We have spring, summer, and fall, and then winter is simply a feeding phase where you have to feed your colony. These will dictate the events, which are going to be on your sheet and can be adjusted somewhat based on how many resources you're willing to pay. So after you've figured these out and you've got the board set up, we're not using the top half of a board in a 2-player game. You only use kind of the center of the board in a 3-player game and use the whole board in a 4-player game. But once you've set this up, each player is going to first choose what event they're going to have. Now, it dictates that the event starts on 1, which is if you score points this round, you're going to score plus 1 point. That's on your little board here. It shows it right here. But you can adjust this by paying larva cubes. I could pay this larva cube to make it, I can act like I'm 1 level higher in my ant colony, or I could adjust it the other way and say if I hatch larva, I hatch 2 extra. But let's say that I pay my 1 larva to say that I can make the event, if I hatch larva, I get 2 extra. After that, you're going to move on to what's called the births phase, and everyone can do this at the same time. You're going to be using your workers that are called nurses for this aspect, and these are these little hexagons. And you can place these in order to either get more workers or to perform special events, several different things. So the first thing you can do is you can place these over here to hatch larvae. If I were to do this, I would normally get 1 larva for the first one I placed, the next one I placed would get me 2 larvae, and the third one would get me 2 larvae. But since my current event is placing 1 will get me 2 extra, I could place this here and I would get 3 larvae when I did so, when we resolved it. So, if I did that, I would get my 3 larvae, and I'd place them out on the board, right here. And those will be useful later. You can always trade them in 3 larvae for 1 food, but they have other uses throughout the game. The other things you can do with these is you can place 2 of them here in order to get another worker. Now, these are just your generic workers, not the nurses, which are used for doing these things that I'm showing you right now, but you could place 2 here to get a worker, or you could place 2 over here to get a soldier, which is just going to be kind of a useful thing throughout the game for hunting down prey or for conserving food. So maybe I would place these over here to get another worker. And there's an event later in the game, if you happen to be there, where you can get extra workers for placing 2 guys there. If you place 2, you'll get an extra. Or here, if you place 2, you'll get a soldier, which is event number 5. And all of these events will change the game and how it plays. Now, you can also use these guys, if you haven't used them for these other things, to accomplish things out on the board here, which will happen later. You can use them to dig new exits, where you can start placing things out on the board. Or you can use them to increase the level of your colony, so you can place more complex tiles out on the board and store more food and stuff like that. Or you can use them to birth more nurses. You can place a nurse out here, and which will resolve later, and when it comes around, you can pay 2 food and 2 larva cubes to get another nurse for the next round, which will make it even better and even easier to do more things, and highly recommended. You need nurses in the game. After you've placed all of your nurses, which is the birthing phase, you'll move on to the worker phase, and in turn order, each player has the chance to use their workers. You can use your workers or pass, and workers can either be placed on your colony at the level you're at or higher up in order to get the depicted cube. So I could place 1 here to get a larva cube. And I would probably do that and get a larva cube, and then my opponent would take their turn and do something. But after that, you're going to have to send workers outside into the garden in order to do things. And the things they can do out there are many-fold. But if you were to send one out, you would send them out, and usually they have a movement of 3, which is going to be 3 hexagons. When they move across hexagons, and you'll see there's different types of terrain: grass, dirt, and stone, and then there's these mushrooms, which are basically dead areas. But when you can move around, and you can do several things. You can go and hunt prey. So if you moved on top of a prey, you would have to kill it. But in order to kill it, you're going to need soldiers. And a ladybug requires 1 soldier, which you would pay from your board back to the supply. And you would kill this ladybug, and it would get you 2 food. The other bugs, the bigger ones, require 1 and get you a food and 2 points, or the largest ones require 2 soldiers and get you a food and 4 points. So you'll need to accumulate soldiers in order to do that, which we can't do now. The next thing you could do is you could lay down a pheromone tile, and the level of tile you can lay down depends on what level your colony is. Right now I'm level 0, which means I can only lay down 2 hex tiles, but the higher you get, level 1 is 3, level 2 is 4, and level 5 is 5. And then there's a 6 size tile, which you actually have to have the +1 level events in order to lay out onto the board. But you can start out by playing these level 2 hex tiles down. And what these do is if I were to move out, and let's say I moved over to this area over here, 1, 2, 3, I could lay down a hex tile in any way I wanted to as long as one of the spaces was where I was standing. Now, this would give me a food and a stone which I can harvest later. So a food and a stone would go out here, and after my ant is done, he's going to die, and he'll be removed from the board, and he's no longer one of my workers. So if you send them out into the garden, they're gone forever, and you'll have to get more workers. So you can go out and you can hunt, or you can put down tiles, which you can get resources from later. You can actually clean these tiles up later. When they're empty, you can clean them up by moving onto them and paying an earth cube, and that will remove them from the board. You don't lose any points for playing them, but it frees up more area for you to play more tiles. In addition, these tiles actually allow you to move across them easier. So moving across a whole tile, or a whole pheromone they call them, is only 1 movement. So if I had moved here 1, I could move on to here or here, or let's say I moved it here, I could move on to this and go across it for 1, then 2 or 3. So it makes your movement a little bit easier. A couple other actions you can take are to clean up your opponent's pheromone tiles, but that's going to require, again, paying earth cubes. You can lay down some special tiles. There are, if you're level 1 at least, you can play down a special tile that will give you a food each turn, but that requires a stone to play down. Or there's one that can give you a earth or a stone each turn, but it requires a food to play down. The further up levels, you can play one out here that will require 1 of each, food, stone, and earth, will give you victory points each round. So there are some special tiles you can play out, and each of the tiles are worth victory points once you get past the 2-level tiles. The next phase is going to be harvesting, and so based on each one of these pheromone tiles you have out, you can take 1 of the cubes off of them and place them in your supply. Now, the reason that you want to be careful here is you can only hold 4 cubes if you have a size 0 or 1 colony. But if you have a size 2 or 3 colony, you can hold up to 6 cubes after each round. After you're done with that, you're going to resolve any of the nurses you placed out here. And those are going to resolve up here. So like I said, you can pay resources to increase your colony. It costs 2 dirt to go to level 1. It costs 2 dirt and a stone to go to level 2, and then it costs 3 stone to go to level 3, but there are benefits as you advance, allowing you to store more food or play bigger tiles, and to score victory points by placing workers on your colonies. You can start new exits for your tunnels, which allows you to move to new areas, and also gives you an earth. So you may want to place a tunnel at the end of one of your pheromone tiles, allowing you to expand your movement. You can pay to get more nurses, but requires food and larva cubes. Or you can use one of your nurses to permanently be lost, but to accomplish an objective which would score you victory points. So this one requires you to give up 2 soldiers, but you score victory points. This one here requires you to give up 3 food, but you'll score victory points. And once you've finished one of these 2, you can go to the next ones. This one requires you to have 6 nurses and give 1 up in order to score victory points. Or this one requires you to score, or to get rid of 5 food. This one requires 4 prey to be turned in. Or this one requires you to have a level 3 colony to move up 2, meaning that your colony is now a smaller size and you can lay less tiles, but you score victory points for having completed that. And each player who completes those subsequently will score less points. After you've completed any actions out there involving the nurses in this area, be it digging new tunnels or increasing your colony level, getting new nurses or getting victory points, you're going to move on to the end of turn phase. And at the end of the turn, you're going to have to discard cubes that you have that are over your maximum. You're going to regain all of your workers that you placed on your colony, but not ones you placed out here. You're going to get nurses back from wherever they're placed and place them onto your nurse room here, except for the ones that you used to score out here. They stay there permanently. And you're going to start the next round by moving your event marker to, in this case, number 2. So the event marker is now on number 2, but during the next round you could adjust that with your larva cubes to get what event you wanted. Basically, that's going to be one full phase, and you're going to do the next phase in the same way until you go through the third phase, which is going to be winter, which is going to be fall, and then after that you're going to have a winter phase where you're going to have to feed. And at the end of the first winter, or during the first winter, you're going to owe 4 food cubes, -1 for each soldier that you have in the area. So if you happen to have a couple soldiers here, you would only need 2 food cubes. They're going to protect your food, and you need to have 2 food cubes in order to satisfy the demands. After that, you're going to move this down to the next round. You would re-roll all 3 of these dice. So we have a 4, a 1, and a 2 now, and you would start again with another round. You're going to accumulate more workers, you're going to accumulate more nurses, use them to score victory points, put tiles out on the board in order to move around more and harvest more resources, hopefully scoring points by laying down tiles and accomplishing objectives. And whoever has the most points at the end of 3 years, the end of the second year you owe 5 food, and the end of the third year you owe 6 food, or else you lose victory points for each food you don't have. Whoever has the most points at the end of those 3 years is going to be the winner. Well, there you have it. That is Myrmes, a 2 to 4 player game from Yasari Games. A game that on your first playthrough you're probably not going to understand very well. There's a lot of different types of workers to manage. You have to manage your soldiers and your nurses and your just normal workers, and whether you want to place them outside, how you want to place tiles, which of the best events you want to use. There's a lot going on. You need to manage food and earth and stone, and you can only keep so many resources, so there's a lot to follow. And the first game I played of it was just a disaster. I scored like 10 points. I got trounced terribly, but shortly after that I started to pick it up. Food is very important. Having enough will be vital to your strategy, and utilizing it properly, getting enough workers of each type, is going to be very important. So if you're looking for a good challenging game with a unique theme, one that I think has multiple different ways to go about it, if you want to do more direct interaction and try and take over your opponent's area versus kind of secluding yourself off and hoping that nobody bothers you, there's a lot of choices to be made there. I think a great strategy game, and one that a lot of people will really enjoy once it becomes more widely available. So if that sounds interesting to you, check out Myrmes.
Thanks for watching our review today. For more information about board games, as well as the #1 board game audio podcast, check out Dicetower.com for reviews, interviews, and more. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.